The Book of Mormon, a foundational text for Latter-day Saints, contains verses that describe a transformation. The righteous, it claims, will become white and delightsome. These words, found in early editions of the book, sparked controversy and raised accusations of racial bias. Critics argued that tying righteousness to whiteness equated spiritual worth with skin color. In 1981, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints made a significant change. The phrase white and delightsome was replaced with pure and delightsome. This change aimed to address the problematic racial undertones of the original wording. However, the debate continues. Was this alteration enough to rectify the harm caused by the original language? The shift from white to pure represents an attempt to reconcile faith with inclusivity, but the journey towards a truly equitable and welcoming faith for all is ongoing. To understand the controversy surrounding white and delightsome, we must travel back to 19th century America. This was a nation deeply divided along racial lines. Slavery, a brutal system built on white supremacy, cast a long shadow over the country. Racial hierarchies were deeply ingrained in society, shaping laws, customs, and even religious beliefs. Brigham Young, a prominent leader of the early LDS Church, reflected the prevailing racial attitudes of his time. He made statements that condoned slavery and restricted the participation of black members in priesthood ordinances. These actions, though rooted in the historical context, are now widely condemned by the Church. Understanding this historical backdrop is crucial to grasping the complexities of the white and delightsome doctrine. Recognizing the mistakes of the past is essential for growth and progress. The white and delightsome doctrine was used to justify the exclusion of black members from full participation in the church. Some members interpreted the scripture literally, believing that skin color reflected spiritual purity. This interpretation led to discriminatory practices that denied black members access to temple ordinances and priesthood ordination. Some leaders invoked the curse of Cain or theories of premortal unworthiness to explain the restrictions placed on black members. These justifications, however, directly contradicted the Church's second article of faith. The use of Scripture to justify racial exclusion is a stark example of how religious texts can be misinterpreted and manipulated. It underscores the importance of critical analysis, historical context, and a commitment to inclusivity when interpreting religious doctrine. The historical justifications for racial exclusion within the Church created a glaring inconsistency. How could a church that preached universal love and the brotherhood of all mankind simultaneously deny full participation to some based solely on race? Critics argued that the exclusionary practices contradicted the fundamental tenets of Christianity. The discrepancy between the Church's teachings and actions fueled accusations of hypocrisy and racism. This internal struggle ultimately contributed to the Church's decision to lift the priesthood ban in 1978. The Church's journey towards racial equality has been marked by both progress and setbacks. Acknowledging past mistakes is an essential step in this ongoing journey. It allows for healing, reconciliation, and a renewed commitment to creating a truly inclusive faith community. In recent decades, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints has made concerted efforts to promote inclusivity and address its history of racial discrimination. One notable step was the 1978 revelation that lifted the priesthood ban, extending ordination to all worthy male members, regardless of race. This landmark decision marked a turning point in the Church's relationship with race and paved the way for greater inclusion. The Church has also taken steps to acknowledge and celebrate the contributions of black members throughout its history. For instance, Jane Elizabeth Manning James, a black pioneer who demonstrated unwavering faith despite facing discrimination, has been featured prominently in church materials and artwork. These efforts, while commendable, do not erase the pain of the past. However, they represent a sincere desire to learn from history and create a more just and inclusive future for all members of the church. The journey towards racial equality is ongoing, requiring continued introspection, education, and a commitment to dismantling systemic racism. The controversy surrounding white and Delightsome raises questions about the symbolism of white within the LDS faith. Some argue that white represents purity, cleanliness, and holiness rather than race. They point to the white clothing worn in temples, symbolizing spiritual cleanliness and a separation from the world. However, critics argue that this interpretation ignores the historical context and the harmful impact of associating righteousness with whiteness. The debate over the symbolism of white highlights the challenges of interpreting religious language in a culturally sensitive and inclusive manner. It underscores the need for ongoing dialogue and a willingness to reconsider traditional interpretations. By acknowledging the potential harm of associating righteousness with whiteness, the Church can create a more welcoming and inclusive environment for members of all races and ethnicities. Joseph Smith, the founder of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, made revisions to the Book of Mormon throughout his lifetime. These changes provide insight into his evolving understanding of doctrine and language. Interestingly, Smith himself changed the phrase white and delightsome to pure and delightsome in an 1840 edition of the Book of Mormon. This alteration suggests an awareness of the potential for misinterpreting white as a racial designation. It also highlights the dynamic nature of Scripture and the role of prophets in receiving revelation and making adjustments. However, Smith's revision did not address all instances of white being used in the Book of Mormon. The evolution of the Book of Mormon's language demonstrates the ongoing process of seeking revelation and adapting to changing social contexts. It underscores the importance of interpreting Scripture through the lens of modern understanding and prophetic guidance. Despite the Church's efforts to promote inclusivity, racism persists among some members and leaders. This reality underscores the deeply ingrained nature of prejudice and the ongoing need for education, awareness, and accountability. Instances of racist remarks, discriminatory behavior, and microaggressions within the Church highlight the challenges of dismantling systemic racism. These incidents, though often unintentional, perpetuate harmful stereotypes and create a climate of exclusion for members of color. The Church has acknowledged the need to address racism within its ranks. Leaders have spoken out against prejudice, and educational materials have been developed to promote understanding and empathy. However, eradicating racism requires a sustained and multifaceted approach that addresses both individual biases and systemic inequalities. Creating a truly inclusive church requires a commitment from all members to confront racism in all its forms. Jane James's story embodies both the progress and ongoing challenges of racial equality within the church. A black pioneer who joined the church in its early days, James exhibited unwavering faith and devotion despite facing significant discrimination. James maintained a close relationship with Joseph Smith and his family, even traveling with them to Nauvoo. However, she was denied access to temple ordinances, including sealing to her husband due to her race. Despite these obstacles, James remained a faithful member of the church until her death. Her story highlights the complexities of the church's racial history. It showcases the faith and resilience of black members who endured prejudice while clinging to their beliefs. James's legacy serves as a powerful reminder of the ongoing need to address racial disparities and create a truly inclusive church for all. The church has recognized James's faithfulness and the injustices she faced. The controversy surrounding the Mormon Church's white and delightsome doctrine and the Mormon Church's complex history with race create both challenges and opportunities. By acknowledging past mistakes, engaging in honest dialogue, and actively promoting inclusivity, The church can continue its journey towards becoming a more welcoming and equitable faith for all. The shift from white and delightsome to pure and delightsome represents a step towards greater sensitivity and inclusivity. However, it is crucial to recognize that language evolves, and interpretations must adapt to reflect a more nuanced understanding of race and equality. Moving forward, the church must prioritize education, empathy, and accountability in addressing racism within its ranks. The journey towards racial equality is ongoing and requires a sustained commitment from all members. By working together, the church can strive to create a community that reflects the diversity of God's children and embodies the true meaning of Christian love and fellowship